Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Good evening and compliments. Thank you very much. Wow, it's our first session for the year for 2022. I hope you can hear me. Thank you so much. We will start off as we do. Expect our other colleagues to join us, because it's our tradition, it's our discipline that we start exactly at 6 p.m. And obviously others will join us on the way. So thank you so much for joining us. We are going to have another wonderful and lovely session tonight as we empower each other, as we sharpen one another as leaders. And that is what exactly we are going to do. Again, my name is Mazwe Majola. Others, they call me Professor Mazwe Majola from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. We run these leadership sessions every Wednesdays. We did this the whole of last year, and we have lovely, lovely sessions last year, empowered by great speakers. Actually, we started this session or these sessions in 2020. It was in August 2020. That's why we started these sessions, and we have been meeting every Wednesday since then without fail, whether it's raining or whether it's cold or whether there was a load shedding or whatever. We never, ever, ever stopped. We've always been meeting since then. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Welcome to our members. Welcome to our regulars. Welcome to our soldiers, those people who have been soldiering on last year. I can see many, many of you, and I won't even mention your names. I see Professor Zide there, my sister Martha is there, my brother Dr. Potelwa, I see Professor Nkomo, and I see many, many others as well. So all those who have been really meeting with us every Wednesdays or as often as possible, we would like to thank you for coming back again. We thank God that we are back. Obviously, when we closed our session last year, we closed on a very, very high note. I remember our last session, we were talking about leadership journey. Yes, leadership journey. And even there, we said the journey continues. The journey continues. And even now, in 2022, the journey continues, because we have realized, as we always say, that leadership is a journey. Leadership is not a destination. Those leaders who don't empower themselves, who don't develop themselves, they become obsolete. That is why we started this community of leaders, that we may meet every Wednesdays to sharpen each other, and to empower each other. It's a safe space for leaders, for executives, we've got leaders coming from all walks of life here. We've got executives from government or from public sector, from private sector. We've got academics from different universities, politicians, members of the media, you name them, all sorts of people, religious leaders. So as long as you're a leader, you are welcomed here, and would like to thank you so much for joining us. And a special welcome to those who are joining us for the very first time. Thank you so much for joining us. As we always say, these sessions are very contagious. You attend one, there is no way we are not going to come back again next week, because as you are going to witness tonight, it's a vibrant session, a viable session, leaders talking to other leaders. We empower each other. People who are here are executives, the board members, so we learn from each other. We always say we come here to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn. And that's exactly what has been keeping us going. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so happy that you are with us tonight. And I want to assure you that we are going to be empowered. We are so blessed and we're so grateful and humble that in our first session, we are starting with one of the powerful, greatest leader in our time, in our country, the man and the brother. I respect and admire a lot. He's a scholar. He's a political analyst. He's. I'll be introducing him shortly. Professor Maluleke is the one who's going to empower us tonight, and then we'll be discussing one of the powerful topics that we'll be discussing. So please, if it's your first time joining us, don't be shy, don't be diffident, don't hold back, don't say, no, let me just see how others do things. We would like to learn from you. As I'm saying that, people who see here, they're leaders, so we are all leaders coming from different angles. We learn from each other. So we'd like to hear your views. We'd like to hear your contributions. What's going to happen? We are going to introduce the speaker, and he's going to take over and give us his address. And once he has done, then we can enter into a conversation. We call it a conversation. Obviously, we engage the speaker. Questions, answers, and observations, and also we are allowed to give your own observation. As I'm saying that we are all leaders, and actually I always say 90% of people you see here, they are our past speakers and past panelists. So that's why I say you attend, there is no way that you are not gonna come back again, because you'll notice that you belong here. If you don't come, really, where will you go? You know, so we learn from each other. The people who have been talking, they are here, they're listening to others. And then next week we'll be hearing others, next month we'll be hearing others, and then others will come back. That's who we are, and just learning from each other. We are a community of leaders. We are leaders in leadership, as we always say that from Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. So thank you very much, as I'm saying that to all our members and our regulars, and in particular for those who are here for the first time again. Without any further ado, let me introduce the speaker, and then he will take over. And then, as I'm saying, after that, while he's speaking, my sister Martha is the Senior Communications Manager at Wholesale and Retail SETA. We have been soldiering on with her since we started. So our team member here, she will be handling the chat room. And then also, I think there is a registration form there in the chat room. So please do fill in that registration form so that we can also share with you the recording, the copy of the recordings recorded. And then after this, we are more than happy to distribute to those who attended and also to those who registered. So please do that. Martha will be handling that for us. So let me introduce Professor Maluleke. We all know him. That is why we all came here today. We all know him really, but for formalities, we'll introduce him, not because we don't know him. And please, I'm begging your indulgence, Prof. I know that you've got a long CV. I'm going just to read just a snippet of it, so that obviously we don't read the whole book. But just the important thing. So I'm going to introduce you, Prof, and then after that we'll hand over to you, and then we are all yours. As I'm saying that here, the people who are here really, if they were to introduce themselves, each and every one of them, I mean, obviously, unfortunately, we are not in a seminar, or workshop, we don't have that time. But people coming from, the scholars from different universities, as I'm saying that, others from private sector, public sector, you name them, all over the place, they are here. So here, Professor Tinyiko Maluleke is currently the Deputy Director and Senior Research Fellow at the University of Pretoria Center for the Advancement of Scholarship. He is also a non-executive director of the MTN Foundation and the National Research Foundation boards, as well as being a well-published scholar in his field of specialization, which is the intersection between politics, culture, and religion. Professor Maluleke is an elected member of the South African Academy of Science. The South African National Research Foundation currently rates him at the level of B1. That means he is considered an internationally acclaimed researcher in terms of the number of quality of publications and graduated master's and PhD students in his field. Amongst other universities, Professor Maluleke has been a visiting professor at Hamburg University in Germany, University of Vienna in Austria, University of Nairobi, that is in Kenya, Calvin University in USA, University of Botswana, obviously in Botswana, University of Helsinki in Finland, and University of Lausanne in Switzerland. Professor Maluleke has served in various executive management roles at UNISA, at University of Johannesburg, and mostly recently at University of Pretoria in the role of advisor to the Vice-Chancellor. Professor Maluleke is the incoming Principal and Vice-Chancellor of the Tshwane University of Technology, as well as the scholarly publications required of him as a researcher. Professor Maluleke disseminates his knowledge through the regular publication of opinion pieces in such media platforms as you'll find him, you've seen him, you've read his pieces from, for instance, Mail and Guardian, Sunday Independent, and Sunday World. Professor Maluleke, on behalf of Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development, and on behalf of these powerful people here, I respect these powerful a lot. I always tell them that I really respect each and everyone who is here. Sir, I would like to congratulate you in your new position as an incoming Principal and Vice-Chancellor at TU2, and also for your role. I know that you've been telling me that for the last 2 days, actually even now you are coming from the National Planning Commission strategic session or something. So I know that you've sacrificed your time. You have been there for days. Even now you are coming from there. The whole day you are there, and then you are coming to address us here. It shows your commitment to this country, and it shows your humility as well. Thank you so much, Prof. And over to you. Hear your people, take your time, address us, whatever that is in your heart, and then we'll engage you once you have addressed us. Thank you so much. Over to you, my brother, over to you.
Thank you very much, Prof, and thanks, colleagues. I see Prof. Zide amongst the people in attendance. I would like to acknowledge him as one of the people I have looked up to for many, many years. I have not been able to prepare a thoroughgoing lecture at all. So what I will do is to share a few ideas with you, and hopefully there will be enough to provoke and evoke a discussion between us. I titled my talk, "The Leadership of Ideas and the Idea of Leadership Towards an Idea-Driven Model of Imaginative Leadership." So let me start by making a few qualifications. I do not intend to assault you with yet another lecture about leadership typologies. I know that you know all about these, and you know all about authoritarian leadership. Those of us who are my age and near, you know, either just below me or above me, will know that the apartheid and the Bantustan leadership models were authoritarian. So when discussing authoritarian leadership, we often fail to see how much of it is all around us and still with us, in the home, in the corporate, public, NGO sectors as well. Everyone knows one authoritarian leader personally. It's not possible not to know one because they are so many. Sometimes we call these authoritarian leaders strong leaders, mistakenly in my view. Mostly we tolerate and euphemize them, always searching for more colorful ways to minimalize them. And all the while, we also minimize the misery. We underestimate the stunting effect on growth of companies and people when authoritarian leaderships are operational. We should, of course, not continue to do that. Often, we substitute fear for loyalty, fear-mongering for motivation, and sometimes we even confuse decorum, formality, and compliance with trust. There are, of course, other unhelpful types of leadership into whose detail I will not go, generally referred to as toxic forms of leadership. The hallmarks of these include bullying, arrogance, low self-esteem, which sometimes masquerades as high self-esteem, but actually it is low self-esteem, poor people skills, poor governance, unethical behavior, and above all, lack of vision. Two of the most popular types of leadership today include the so-called servant leadership, a phrase that was popularized for the first time in the 1970s by Robert Greenleaf, of whom we must all know, as well as transformational leadership, also coming from the late 70s from James McGregor Burns. Whatever the details and the niceties of all these types of leadership, the fact remains that leaders must lead. Leaders become leaders because they have showed enough signs of ability to lead, whether it be in a selection panel or in community meetings or in the country as such. And yes, leaders have different types of power. Many of you will be aware of the 1959 study on the 6 different forms of leadership power, which was also published during those years. Coercive power, reward power, legitimate power. It should actually be called legitimated power, referent power, information power, and expert power. Those are not the only forms of power that leaders have, but I think at least as a typology, they are quite helpful. My submission in this brief presentation is to suggest a cross-cutting form of power, which for me is the original, the ultimate, and the most effective form of power of leadership, namely the power of ideas. So I take leave from discussion of leadership types because we all know these and we have had enough discussions on those. Of all our troubles as a people and as a nation, the most profound has to do with leadership. Therein, that is in leadership, lies the potential solutions too. I am not for a moment underestimating the problems, the other problems that we have, the lack of economic growth, the unemployment, the inequality, the poverty, the corruption, the educational underperformance, and so on. In saying that leadership is our greatest problem, I'm not suggesting that the problem of low industrialization, lack of innovation, and low participation in entrepreneurship can be ignored, not at all. What I'm saying is that the absence of leadership ideas, whether they be ideas that have to do with the character and nature of leadership, or ideas that have to do with the devising of plans and their implementation, this is at the heart of our problems. To paraphrase what Chinua Achebe once said of his native land, and I want to substitute South Africa for Nigeria. In the original quote, of course, he is talking about Nigeria, and I quote, "The trouble with South Africa is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. There is nothing basically wrong with the South African character. There is nothing wrong with the South African land or climate or water or air or anything else. The South African problem is the unwillingness or inability of its leaders to rise to the responsibility, to the challenge of personal example, which is the hallmark of true leadership," end of quote. It was 20 years after Nigeria had become independent when Chinua Achebe penned this paragraph in a little, very angry book, perhaps one of the best books he has written, non-fiction, that is. In the 10 years, let's say 20 years, between 1960 and 1985, 25 years, Nigeria had no less than 7 coups. We just heard of another coup in Africa just this week. So it's not as if the era of coups is behind us. What horrified Achebe was how ordinary Nigerians were becoming acclimatized and comfortable with a dysfunctional country. And that may ring a bell to South Africa in our own days. And I quote his rationale for writing this little book titled "The Trouble with Nigeria." And he says, "The trouble with Nigeria," in inverted commas, "has become the subject of our small talk in much the same way as the weather is for the English. But there is a great danger in consigning a life and death issue to the daily routine of small talk. No one can do much about the weather. We must accept it and live with or under it. but national bad habits are a different matter. We resign ourselves to them at our own peril. End of quote. That's the rationale. So everywhere you went, in taxis, in buses, in drinking halls, people were talking, and the first 4 words in their discussions was the trouble with Nigeria is. But nobody was saying clearly what the trouble was. And that's why he wrote this book, which starts with a sentence that I just quoted above. The trouble with Nigeria is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. Sentence number 1 of that book. So he begins the book with the elephant in the room, and he stays with that elephant in the room throughout the small little book. What frustrated Achebe was not merely that people held divergent opinions as to what the trouble with Nigeria was. What irked him was how it seemed that the people were too scared to name the problem of absence of leadership. He noted that people were going about blowing grammar, and I'm quoting him here, all over the place, as if our problem stemmed from insufficient shouting. So there was a lot of shouting, but none of it was precise. None of it put the problem in the center of it. Achebe's basic argument, which I also wish to assert today, is that whereas we have many problems in the land, whereas we have many fires burning, literally, actually, at this time, and I quote him, without good leadership, none of the problems that we have stands a chance of being tackled, let alone solved. End of quote. In short, Achebe argues that leadership matters. A country is in trouble when people who want and can't lead proceed to occupy leadership positions. A country runs into trouble when leaders and leader organizations evade and avoid to lead. We are in trouble when such leaders elect to follow rather than lead their followers. Because, and I quote again, no known human enterprise has flourished on the basis of followers leading their leaders. Not once in history do you have an instance where you can prove that followers successfully took control of their leaders, and their leaders were able to achieve because they followed. What then is leadership? For me, leadership concerns the constant generation of ideas, fresh ideas. That's my definition of leadership. Without the generation of ideas, there is no leadership. Therefore, anyone who is incapable of leveraging the freshest thinking available should stay away from leadership. The reason African leadership concerns the ability of individual leaders, rather, African leadership, I would like to propose, concerns the ability of individual leaders and leader organizations to fire up the imagination of followers, as well as the ability to transform aspirations, including those aspirations that present as grievances, because sometimes aspirations do not speak in their own name. They come in the form of grievances. But all of those will be translated into concrete goals by leaders who are brimming with ideas, who are in pursuit of fresh ideas, who leverage and search for this. Leadership concerns the strategic charting of a course of action that will be followed in order to achieve the set goals. Such goals must then be pursued with grit and determination, but always with openness to ideas, to fresh ideas, because the hallmark of leadership is ideas. Now, think of this. Neither Nkrumah, for all the criticism that he receives, some of which is not fair, neither Nkrumah nor Nyerere, also equally criticized, were perfect paragons of virtue. But the better aspects of their legacies pertain to their relentless pursuit of fresh ideas intended to impact beyond one generation. Because unless you look for fresh ideas, you are not likely to be able to impact beyond one generation or beyond your political term or beyond your contractual term. It is no accident that Nkrumah had 2 master's degrees in different disciplines. Nyerere had a master's degree in political economy. And if you go to Ghana today, the people of Ghana can show you legacy projects that come from the Nkrumah era that have ensured that the country has energy and has as much food security as they possibly could. The dream of the OAU was such a faraway dream, such a far-flung dream, but it would not have been possible for anyone who leads without ideas. And Nkrumah was such a person who was able to have this dream about a united Africa, an Africa without borders, an Africa that collaborates and cooperates, much like we have seen happening much later in Europe, in other places, and in other places. To Nyerere, we owe the Ujamaa philosophy. It's not a perfect philosophy, but I think it's often given more bad press than it is worth. We also owe to him the African experiment in transnational linguistic citizenship, in terms of which we have Kiswahili as the lingua franca in East Africa up to today. Of course, he thought fighting tribalism, but I think the benefits have gone way beyond his initial thinking about this. These are big ideas that continue to resonate, ideas that went beyond provincial and party political boundaries. We may not even remember the name of the political party to which Nyerere belonged or to which Nkrumah belonged, but we know the ideas that they stood for, and we can go and touch those ideas. Southern Africa, I want to suggest, is crying out for such idea-driven leadership. Such leadership will go beyond national visions and go further to probe the moral purpose around which society is mobilized. That is leadership that probes the moral purpose of the development and economic projects. It's not good enough just to say we have this and that and that and that project and these initiatives. What is the purpose of it all? What is the moral purpose? It is only when you have idea-driven leadership that the whole vision around purpose of why we do what we do, not just for today and tomorrow, but for day after tomorrow, for the next generation, will then be generated. As well as being idea-driven, the means of leadership should be ethical, and so should be the ends being espoused. In the context where the identities of workers and the modalities of work itself will change fundamentally, thanks to 4IR, ethics are about to become not less, but more important. Algorithms will need to respect human rights, How do we do that? How do we build algorithms or make sure that these algorithms will respect human rights? Robots that pay taxes and robots that are ethical in their decisions. Almost all of the above major problems in the world today, rather, all of the major problems in the world today, including poverty, violence, environmental degradation, and so on, can be traced back to the lack of ethical intelligence among leaders and lack of ethical intelligence in our key national policies. The poverty levels in South Africa are high, not because the country lacks resources, but rather because an immoral economic system for which the poor are a trade-off or collateral damage is in place. To speak of idea-driven leadership is to speak of leaders who constantly seek and source the purest, most humane, most innovative, most ethical, and most developmental ideas. In and of itself, that is not a new idea. We are putting forward an idea that is often neglected or even forgotten, not a new idea. The reason that Ushaka was a great king is not because he was cruel, as the Bantu education history books taught us, but he was great because he led with the freshest ideas available to leaders during his time. He sourced these ideas, he pursued them, he treasured them. Ideas about empire building, ideas about the best arts of war, for example. So the reason African royalty spent lots of time consulting their advisors and convening Mahuta was so as to source the brightest and freshest ideas available. The reason we send our kids to schools is so as to source and leverage the freshest ideas available. The reason leaders must be educated, whether formally or informally, is because their education enhances their ability to source and generate fresh ideas. This delinking of education from the sourcing of ideas that will better lives, where people believe that the reason they need to be educated is to have a good CV or a few certificates, which in and of themselves are an end in and of themselves, is problematic. Contrary to popular belief, the likes of Ushaka, King Mushweshwe, Steve Jobs, and Bill Gates are proof of the importance and power of new and fresh ideas in leadership. Indeed, if we were to expand our notions of education beyond schooling, and if we were to expand our notion of leadership beyond the rigid political, public, and corporate sector roles we have taken to be the sine qua non of leadership, we would discover that at the heart of what it means to lead is the ability to generate, to source, to leverage, and to imagine new and fresh ideas. Let me end my talk by referring to an African folk tale. In 2009, a group of authors put together a little book of folk tales. They titled it Nelson Mandela's Favorite African Folk Tales. Now, I will not be able to retell this story in the way that it is told in that audio book of 2009, attributed to Nelson Mandela. He apparently chose many of the folk tales that are told there. But in this audio book, they are told by famous people like Whoopi Goldberg and you know, the people who know how to really tell stories. And famous musicians took part in that. You have Vice-Chancellor, the late Johnny Clegg, and so on, were also taking part in that. The first story in that book is, for me, a great illustration of the pursuit of ideas and the leveraging of ideas and the sourcing of it. You know, a leader who generates fresh ideas need not generate the ideas by and of themselves. It's not possible, but they should be able to know where to find the fresh ideas, who to go to, how to source them, how to leverage these ideas. So the story is told of a king who, it's titled The Ring of the King. So once there was a king with a ring, and in this ring lay the secret of his power. He needed to wear this ring all the time, because if he was wearing this ring, he was protected from all enemies, and he was guaranteed safety wherever he was, and respect, because he was wearing this ring. Of course, because of that, he had to wear the ring, whether he is walking, whether he is talking, wherever he is, the ring had to be on his finger, except when he had a bath. So when he had a bath, he had a routine as to how he shut the doors, took the ring, and put it in a very special place, so that after the bath, he can then go and get the ring and put it back on. Except for one day, when he went back to find that the ring was gone. It had been stolen. The problem was that he couldn't tell people that his ring was stolen, because if he told people that, they would know that he is vulnerable. He is no longer that powerful. He can be attacked, and he could actually lose his power. So what could the chief do, the king rather? So the king spent a lot of time thinking, pacing up and down, and eventually called one of his greatest advisors. In fact, his daughter advised him to go and call his one of his diviners, Zavusa. And Zavusa came and spoke to him. The upshot of the story is that Zavusa came with an idea that because the thief must be among the subjects of the king, what needs to happen is that the subjects of the king must be given sticks of the same length. And they were then told that these sticks were very powerful. They had to look after them and spend the night with the sticks and come back in the morning, each one with their stick. And the idea was that the stick that belongs to the thief will be 3 inches longer than the other sticks. And what happens, of course, is that the thief cut his stick and made it shorter by 3 inches. And that's how he was found out. The king would not have known how to get his ring back if it wasn't for the advice that he was able to leverage from the people around him who were advising him. And I think that for me, this is a beautiful illustration of leadership that leverages ideas and power, especially when it seems like the leader has reached cul-de-sac. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Maluleke. We knew that definitely we will be empowered tonight. And obviously, we're still going to empower us because we've just started. Ladies and gentlemen, those who joined us or who were delayed, I know we are very, very busy people. And of course, you sacrificed to be here. And thank you so much that you made it. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. Of course, you had some of the comments or some of the observations from Professor Tinyiko, and thank you so much. That I think what I get from him is that really leadership without ideas is dead. Leadership without ideas is dead. Those leaders who have left legacy are those who came up with fresh and brilliant ideas, who generated, as he's saying, constant generation of ideas. Thank you so much. I always say that I'm just the driver, another driver. I saw a driver there by my brother there, Franz Baleni. He says a driver. I'm a driver here as well, Brother Franz. So I'm going to open up because I really don't want to waste any time. We always say that we are limited because of Zoom, but I'm saying let's open up the conversation. If you have any comments, any questions, any observations, now is the time to express it. I did say that when we closed last year, we closed on a high note. We're discussing the leadership journey, and I'm very glad that I see my sister Gukum Kize, who was our speaker last year in our last session. She's in attendance tonight. That we said the journey continues, and even now the journey continues. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's about ideas. Prof. Maluleke saying it's about ideas. So, as colleagues are preparing their questions and their observations, Prof. Maluleke, may I just ask? I completely agree with the ideas situation that really, as leaders, you've got to generate ideas. Without ideas, we are not going to go any further. How do we balance that with the depth and the paucity of implementation, especially, I mean, in our country, that has been a lot of lamentation that there are so many policies, you could call that policies, I mean, emerge out of ideas, but are not implemented. And I'm happy that you are here. You are a member of the National Planning Commission, which again is more about generating ideas there. It's more about ideas, but the question is implementation. Someone once said in the presidency, we've got National Planning Commission, we've got monitoring. I don't know if that monitoring commission includes implementation as well, but he was just saying that when are we going to have the execution commission? So how do you balance that, Professor Maluleke, the importance of ideas, but obviously being a leader that is not only idea focused, but also because those ideas, if they're not put into action, they're also dead. So what do you think about that, Prof. Maluleke?
Yeah, the reason I didn't include the Planning Commission in my brief bio that I sent to you is that I don't want to be mistaken for representing the Planning Commission. So I wouldn't want to speak here with any inkling of reference to the Planning Commission. I don't represent it. I have hardly begun to be a member of it. But of course, that doesn't mean that we can't comment on the Planning Commission and its work, but I don't represent them. These are just my thoughts. They represent me and my jackets, not the Planning Commission at all. Yeah, implementation is important. Of course, that's what we cry about. But you know, does it ever occur to us that some of the so-called brilliant ideas are not implementable? So the problem is not always with implementation. The problem is with the original idea, which we call beautiful, but it's actually not an idea that has been thoroughly thought through, which is why it will never fly. So we think an idea is great if it is in a big shining presentation, PowerPoint presentation. I mean, think of the ideas behind ASGISA, the ideas behind the National Development Plan. Think of all those ideas. Don't rush to say these ideas are great. All we need is to implement them. I'm not so sure that the ideas are great. I think we have reached a stage where we assume that our policies are great and they are informed by great ideas. All that needs to happen is to get them done. And I want to propose that there are many reasons why they are not being implemented. There is a lack of will, but one reason that is seldom spoken about is that some of the ideas are just bad ideas and therefore are difficult to implement because of that.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Prof. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we can engage with a Prof now, and we can engage each other on the topic, the leadership of ideas and the idea of leadership. We've had the Prof and what we say as leaders as we are beginning the year 2022. We beginning the year with ideas and with a will, as the Prof is saying, because there may be we might having those ideas only to find that there's no will to implement them, or maybe there are no people who are fit for purpose to implement them. They're just on paper. Professor Zide, what do you think? What do you think, Prof, about the leadership of ideas? So. Can you unmute Prof Zide? We can't hear you. Unmute Prof Zide.
Okay. Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Prof Maluleke, for such a very interesting and well-presented topic. I knew that choosing Prof Maluleke, we're choosing one of the best presenters, you know, so thank you very much. I think that drawing from what Prof Maluleke has shared with us, I was quite impressed with reference to King Shaka and King Moshoeshoe and all other, you know, African kings, which unfortunately Bantu education presented to us as thugs and criminals and all of that. But most importantly, I think he has demystified what Bantu education taught us. But I just want to say, you know, when I visited my late uncle in 1976 on Robben Island, when I accompanied my aunt, amongst many things that he shared with me, he said that, look, he used to call me Mfo. He said, Mfo, you must never, ever, ever refer to yourself as a product of Bantu education, because Bantu education has not made you who you are. You may have been a recipient of Bantu education, but certainly not a product. And so I think Tinyiko has really comforted me in saying that, look, Bantu education was this bad, but fortunately for some of us, we have since realized that, look, Bantu education has not really affected us, and instead it has made us to be much better informed. And so indeed, I want to agree that leadership is really a process. It is not a destination, as you, Prof. Mazwe, indicated. But above all, I was quite impressed with the 6 leadership the powers which Prof. Maluleke shared with us, as well as his own definition of leadership. But I think I really need to round it off by saying that when he said the hallmark of leadership is really ideas, and that this should really be an idea-driven leadership, which ethically puts morality at the center of leadership, as well as the unwillingness in some instances of really having that capacity to lead. But most importantly, as I close, I don't know what Prof. Maluleke can really say to us as Africans, particularly when it comes to coup d'etats. You know, you read, you listen to the news, no year or even 5 years go by without there being a coup d'etat in 1 or 2, 3 African countries. But one rarely hears about such coup d'etats in other continents. Is there something drastically wrong with us as Africans in the promotion of coup d'etats all the time? So that is a question which I'm putting to Prof. Maluleke, as I appreciate his presentation. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you. Thanks, Prof. Zide. Thank you very much. Before we go back to our speaker, I see a hand there from my brother, Franz Baleni. Over to you, Brother Franz.
Thanks, Chair, and compliments of the new year, Professor Majola. Professor Maluleke, I have offered my service to you, and congratulations. Mine really, Prof, normally I prefer in this platform that we take lessons from leadership and various experiences in order to move forward into the future. I like to follow the Chinese history, and I look at Deng Xiaoping from the perspective you have just presented of ideas as the pioneer of both social and economic transformation of China. And that has lasted over many years up to now. Each president followed that, take it to the next level until the current president, Xi Jinping. And Chinese people can experience directly that so many people have been taken out of poverty. Initially 700 million people, subsequently 55 million by 2020. What is that are we missing in our country to have that consistency of ideas which has a direct impact and bearing where is mostly needed?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Maybe I see that there are 2 questions in the chat room. We'll come back to them. Maybe we may ask Professor Maluleke to respond. Probably they may, I mean, so that we don't make them into maybe, yes. Over to you, Prof.
Yeah, let me go back a little bit to the whole idea of the disconnect between ideas and implementation, because I think that's going to come back again and again, and it should. It's an important question. But if you look at our country, I mean, if you go to any village, whether you go to the Eastern Cape or to Limpopo, or in any of our inner cities which are decaying, you see what is going wrong. So you can go to a village and find that in that village, there is no early learning center. There's no crèche, for example. But the village has got 4 or 5 people who have just qualified as teachers. They have the skills to run an early learning center. They live in that village, but they will not start an early learning center. They will wait until they get called to a job interview at a school somewhere else. You may even have people with the skills to civil engineers who can build a small bridge, at least direct the building of such a small bridge to help the kids go across the river. But they will not think about how to apply that in their own village. So when I'm talking about ideas, I'm not talking about highfalutin ideas that are in some big plan somewhere. I'm talking about the ideas that we can leverage where we are to solve our own small little problems in the towns and villages where we are, with the skills that we have, that we may not be utilizing fully. Now, as far as schools are concerned, I wouldn't want to essentialize them and say they are an African problem exclusively, because we have seen attempts at coups in the USA recently. I mean, what was that about when Donald Trump was refusing to accept the results? If he had the wherewithal, he would have staged the coup, and he almost succeeded in doing that. So it's a problem with power and how people relate to it, and the loss of power. That's one thing. But it's also social instability. I mean, take Burkina Faso, that where there's just been a coup now, one of the poorest countries in the world. So you end up in a situation where things are so broken down that all manner of would-be leaders emerge, usually from the army, but from anywhere else. They can emerge and find someone to blame, because that is the other thing, you know. So they tell you, no, you wouldn't be in these problems if it wasn't for so and so, or this group of people. We see this game being played more and more, and even in our country, I think it is coming. So it seems to me that the problem of coups is rooted in social problems that we have, and people, perhaps the democratic institutions are not very well grounded in society and in our schooling system. That could be part of it. But you know, you can preach as much democracy as you want. When people are hungry, they become usable. So, you know, it's only a matter of time before the 4 million young South Africans who are not at work and at school are given a job by some hot-head leader somewhere who will tell them, your problem is so and so, take up arms, or whatever, you know. So it's, and I think until we address those basic problems, then people are available. I mean, if you've got nearly 10 million young people unemployed, they are available to do crimes such as coups, and to be employed in other ways. China and Singapore are often given as examples of progress. And those of us who have been to China, especially if you go to Shanghai, you will, of course, come back impressed with what you see there. And of course, if you follow their history and where they were, you know, a few decades ago and where they are now, same thing with Singapore and South Korea, if you want to extend it. But I think we must remember that the foundation is highly undemocratic in China. I know that Mr. Baleni will probably not agree with me, especially if he comes from the SACP. But the foundation is not democratic. I mean, the founder of Singapore, the modern Singapore, not the actual founder, who has written 2 thick books about how he led Singapore from a third world country into a first world country. he was a dictator at the beginning. I mean, he started off by arresting people for throwing chewing gum on the street and giving them lashes for that, and banning chewing gum and many other things that you can talk about. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, you know, how much of that authoritarian base do we need beyond the law, the rule of law, as it were? Of course, what he did was to make all these things that I call authoritarian into law. So it was, you know, the rule of law. Same thing in China. So I think we will have to, we need a conversation about that. I mean, Chinua Achebe, who I refer to in my talk. So he tells a story of how in 1983, when he wrote that book, in fact, he wrote it just after a coup by an army general who was so feared that people started queuing properly in bus stops, and the traffic started behaving well in Nigeria for a short while. But it didn't last because it was out of fear. You know, to keep the balance between going to that extreme of discipline to the extreme of lawlessness is what we need perhaps to think about in terms of our own development. I mean, what's going on in our inner cities, for example, the hijacked buildings, the littering that is there. It's as if South Africans don't believe this is their country. You know, so it's what I think we need to address, Babu Baleni. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Prof. Thank you very much. Let me give other colleagues. So there is a question there. It's from Monwabisi. Monwabisi, we can give you time to ask the question, and then Monwabisi will be followed by Dr. Sifuku Ramoshoba. And then I see my brother there, Dr. Abdul. So three of you in that order, please. We start with Monwabisi. Are you there, Monwabisi? Okay, let's move to Dr. Sifuku. Dr. Ramoshoba.
Good evening, Prof, and good evening to everyone, and compliments for the new season.
Yes, sir.
I think for me, it's with all the policies that we have, you know, and government, you know, they roll out policies on large scales. So what I would like Prof Maluleke to assist, what needs to be done, you know, because, you know, when you look at the design thinking model, it talks about where you think, you know, of ideas, you prototype, you know, you put the ideas on a test. Like I've read something about what is this, Pick and Pay. Now we can renew our driver's license from there. But for 2 weeks, they've tested those ideas. Will it work? At some store somewhere, and they realize the demand, and they realize how the intake in their shops, and now they are rolling out national. Will that help with the government? You know, if they come with an idea, or, you know, of organic farms, instead of throwing billions, you know, you start with a region, you test it there, will it work, and all those things. What might be lacking is just that, you know, we're too theoretical, or, you know, we can't implement, because ideas are there, they are well written, but, you know, they may not be relevant to the landscape that we're living in South Africa. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Dr. Ramoshoba. By the way, just before we continue about Dr. Sifuku, you remember last year when in our last session, we we agreed that we were going to write another book. You know, obviously, there's a book that we are busy with now, Women in Leadership, but we agreed that we're going to write another book about leadership journey. And then I'm so glad and happy or pleased to inform you that this afternoon I received an email from Dr. Sifoko with a chapter for that book. So he's the first person. So this man was not enjoying his holiday, or that's the way he enjoys his holiday. So Dr. Potelwa, Dr. Bongani, Kukum and all those people who committed to write chapters, most of you did, just to let you know that already there is a chapter for that book by Dr. Sifoko. So thank you very much, Doc. Before we get to Abdul, I'll ask Martha. Martha, maybe we may read Monwabisi's question, then we'll take Abdul after that.
All right. Yes, will do, Prof. Monwabisi has seems to have left the session. So he was asking, firstly saying, thank you, Prof. This was very insightful. I wonder, with the idea at the forefront, do we not run the risk of being overly idealistic in our approach? And that is Monwabisi. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. And I think that's what Professor Maluleke was referring to when you responded. But yes, Abdul, yes, sir.
Thanks, Prof. I have basically three questions. The first one is, are leaders born or made? Either way, at what point do they become great leaders? And lastly, what makes one a great leader? Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Abdul. Leaders born or made, they are all human beings. I always say they are born because they're human beings. But anyway, Professor Maluleke.
I think they are made. That's the thrust of my argument tonight. You know, so leaders are made by immersing them in the world of ideas and making them hungry for ideas, so that they seek, pursue better ideas for betterment of themselves, but also especially betterment of the communities in which they find themselves. So in that sense, they are made. It never was the case that a person was born. I mean, even the children of royalty would be mentored, especially because they are children of royalty. Extra mentoring actually was given to them to help prepare them for their leadership role. Nobody just said, I was born because they were born, then we must just leave them. It's in their blood, as it were. They were always mentored. There were people who took them to school, perhaps not school as we have come to know it, but who certainly took them to school. I am a little bit, I prefer to talk more of leadership than the leader, because sometimes we are too focused on the leader as an individual. And that's an important thing. I will not discount that, because the individual is the leader at any given time. But we must remember leadership of community. So the university as leader, the bank as leader, the supermarket as leader. I mean, what the example we've just heard from Shoprite. You know, when I heard that banks were facilitating people to apply for driver's licenses and passports, I think even, I thought, what took them so long, you know, to think about this? Because they've got the data already. They probably have, some of these entities have richer data about us than government departments may have, because they also know what we like to eat and to drink better than Home Affairs will ever know. Home Affairs may just know where I live and my name and give me an ID number, but the local supermarket probably knows a little more about me than Home Affairs. So there is room for collaboration, for complementing one another. And I don't think Dr. Sifuku's question is really, it's not a question, it's a comment. And I love what you are saying, especially the example that you give with ShopRite and other entities that have come in to assist us. The problem, of course, is that, you know, does that help the licensing department to perform better at all? Because the licensing department, there's so much corruption, so much unwillingness to work in some cases. All of us who have queued up to renew our driver's licenses know exactly what I'm talking about. Even, you know, getting a date is very difficult. So I think while we encourage your ShopRites and other people with data, big data to step in, we can't allow government departments not to learn and perform better than they are.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much. By the way, indeed, leaders are made, even the leadership literature or research does say that only 10% the innate or only 10% component that is born, but the 90% component is the made ones, the developed ones. So leaders are developed, leaders are made. That is why even ourselves, we are here every Wednesday. Every Wednesdays is part of that. You want to be a great leader, you've got to drink. We always say you must drink Johnny Walker. You keep on walking. You keep on walking. I don't know what kind of, whether it's a green or yellow or red or black one. Don't ask me what kind I drink or which one I drink. But yes, it's definitely leadership. It's made. Thank you. Martha, we'll come back to you and just to check what is there in the chat room. But before we come to you, I see a hand there from Dr. Sipe Potelo. Dr. Potelo, over to you, my brother.
Thank you very much. Compliments, Prof. Majola. Thank you, Prof. Maluleke. I follow Prof. Maluleke in a number of social media. For me, today, as opening 2022, it's a lecture, Prof. It's a lesson for me to learn. It's not a presentation. I cannot acknowledge a lecture and reduce to a presentation. It's a lecture that I identified and unpack the lecture into 4 ways. Firstly, about Prof mentioned the issue of power, citing a very frank introspection about the state of leadership in South Africa and in Africa in general. That was a good, for me, point taken and point noted about the power and the frank introspection that we should check. 2 is about the ideas in reflection of power, in that power of a leader. The 3rd was about ethics, because we can see today, there is a lack of ethics and discipline. There is no age in an African way, if you can put in African respect. If I'm speaking to you, Prof, I could not treat you, even if it's a political debate, as a parent. There is a reduce of respect from the young people in engagement and discussion about thinking that they know more than the elders and tend to disrespect the elders. The last one was about education of formal and informal. In that way, I thought Prof will go further in a point of introspecting the outcomes of the matrix recently, because it's a debate that confused, and it's a question to me, and that do we still have a leadership in that Department of Education, where now we have results after the opening of schools that make a confusion even to a learner who's waiting for the results, and also for someone who's occupying the desk of a learner who's still waiting for the results. Now we're putting learners in a state of confusion psychologically. But at the end of the day, it comes to a question, do we still have leaders with ideas in that Department of Education? So I would like to ask Prof, in his view, what is his input to that analysis of results after reopening of school, coastal and island? Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof, for the lecture.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Majola. Thank you very much. Prof. Maluleke, please allow me to take these few hands. There are two questions there in the chat room. I'd like these colleagues to ask them. It's Pumzile. Pumzile would like you to ask your question, and then she will be followed by Dr. Mvuselelo Songelwa, sorry, Dr. Mvusi. I like her name, Mvuselelo. I love that name, Dr. Mvuselelo Songelwa. And then after that, we'll take my brother there, Dr. Sfiso Ngobo, and then we'll go back to the Prof after that. We start with Pumzile.
Pumzile Mia.
Pumzile Mia, yes, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry,
Okay.
but I should have said that. Yes, over to you,
I thought
sis.
maybe there are other Pumziles. Thank you, Prof. Yes, I've asked the question that since we are in Africa, and I think we are the generation that has been enlightened about the reality of the matter, so we have identified the problems. So how do we partake in implementation and changing the status quo of the Africans to arise? Because we know what's happening. We have identified it. How do we actively engage? How do we change the pillars, or how do we shape things to change the things for Africa? Because currently we have so many intellects. Africans has the brains, Africans have the resources, be it financial, the minerals and everything, but Africa is the poorest of the poorest continents. So how do we change that? I think we have people in the group, or rather in this session, that maybe they will know someone who knows someone that can change. How do we change the status quo? How do we change?
Thank you. Thanks, Pumzile. Thank you so much, sis. Dr. Songelwa, over to you, sis.
Thank you very much, Prof. Mazwe. My name is Nomvuselelo.
Vuselelo, yes.
Nomvuselelo. In Xhosa, any name that starts with a no as a woman. Yes, thank you for that. And I am also very delighted to participate in this platform for the first time. This was really a very insightful lecture. My question is probably related to what the other colleagues have answered, but specifically I'm just would like to get the views of Prof. Maluleke about the current leadership in South Africa. I think Dr. Potelwa made his own input about it, but I really would like to know holistically what are the views of Prof. And just also probably giving input in terms of how can we ensure that we leverage fresh ideas that can transform leadership if there is any transformation that is needed beyond the schooling. I mean, beyond the schooling, as he has indicated, and also just beyond what we view as leadership in, just only in corporates and like people that are in position of power in public or private sector. How can we really like facilitate this kind of fresh ideas as leaders in this country? Thank you very much, Prof. Mazwe.
Thank you. Thanks very much, my sister, Dr. Mvusi. Thanks a lot. We go to, yes, Dr. Sifiso Ngobo. Yes, my brother.
Prof. Majola, thank you very much, and to the esteemed Prof. Maluleke for such a brilliant, powerful proposition. Greeting colleagues. I will try to find a way to restrain some of my questions because I might be conflicted also in terms of the other work that I do within government itself. But one of the things that I also want to, I think, someone, I think a speaker before me raised that, that issues of ethics and moral. And in a meeting that I was off over the weekend, there was this big meeting. Obviously, we know about it. I'm going to mention part of the decision that arises from the Lekgotla is that there should be a clear distinction and separation of the political and executive role in terms of leadership. And then also depoliticize the state, that if you are an official, you are an official. If you are a politician, you're a politician. I think we'll want to just Prof. Maluleke to then have a bite on that. Then secondly, obviously the video which has been circulating over social media where supposedly a member of the mayoral committee who is duly elected by the people and an official comes through and say we are instructed by the acting municipal manager to remove you from actual office. Also that shows that to a certain extent there's no separation, that even if I'm a municipal manager, because I hold a certain position within the certain organization, or I regard myself as senior to you, even if you're an MMC, I then can instruct people to do that. For me also, that shows that the ethical and moral leadership, where there's no separation of political and national administration, creates such problems, which we have seen in the social media. Then I want to close by probing the minds of all of us who are here. Maybe it's a discussion for future. To example, yesterday, the president of Malawi suspended his cabinet and he says there's no leadership there. But then one of the main things he said, there's corruption. But the main thing he said, I don't have leaders. I need to look for more leaders who will going to serve me. Then you take the likes of Kagame, the president of Rwanda, quickly without taking much time. But I think one of the things that we have observed in one instance where I was in the country, he delayed to come, but he apologized, then he explained. One of the things he said, Prof. Maluleke, is that that angered him because he saw that then the area that we're meeting in, there's a new tar road. Okay, it's fine, we're a special envoy for the president, there's a new tar road. Then he called the Minister of Transport and everybody to then say, why are you building a road? Because I am coming here. It means all of these years there's not been a road. And also then he was then saying to us, I then checked, I needed a specification of who got a contract and what was supposed to be done. And then he saw that some of the things were not done which were in the contract. Then he said either the work must be done today or the contractor must return the money today. Now, yes, we call that in leadership, Prof. Majola, being decisive. Can we have such probing? Can we have such in South Africa? Thank you.
Wow, yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dr. Ngobo. We'll come to you, Professor Maluleke. That is why we are here tonight. That is why we are here tonight. But after you, then we will take the last round and comments. Then we'll give you the time to give you the closing remarks. But can you just respond on the colleagues' questions and observations?
Yeah, the metric results, I wasn't sure whether the question is the timing of their release or the content of the results. Maybe it's a bit of both. The past 2 years have not been normal. I mean, we've had a pandemic. So the timing of things has not been perfect across the board. I mean, even universities, some universities only finished writing exams in January, So one hopes that we will go beyond the COVID problem that we've had. But the question is, how do we produce a South Africa that has learned its lessons from the COVID debacle, which is ready for the next pandemic? I think it's safer to assume that there will be another pandemic, even if it's not called COVID-19. I'm told that one of the reasons some of the smaller countries like New Zealand and Singapore in particular were able to respond better is because they had kept the infrastructure that they had for the SARS pandemic a few years back intact, so they were able to mobilize themselves very quickly. So we as a country have to take 4, 5, 6 big lessons that we have learned from COVID-19. And this must be cross-cutting, not just the health sector, the education sector, all of us. And in a way, some things will never be the same again after COVID. Look at the way we are meeting now. It was unthinkable 3 years ago that we could meet like this. So I wouldn't be too harsh on the department for the timing of the metric results given the pandemic situation. The debate about the actual content of metric, I'm a little bit torn about it because here are youngsters who have managed to stay in the system up to the end, from grade 1 up to metric, in a country where there is a high dropout rate, by the way. So quite a lot of youngsters drop off along the way. And those are, for me, more worrisome than the ones who stay in the system up to the end, because we don't even know what happens to them. They probably are the ones who end up being hired as killers. I don't know. But those who stay in the system up until matric, we need to find a way of not being too harsh on them, because I've seen a few comments where people saying their certificates are worth nothing, they don't really know much. I want to believe that sometimes even the results don't reflect the talent that they have fully. We see it in universities. There are many kids who come with very good symbols from matric. Matric symbols are not themselves always a reliable predictor of performance going forward. So I think we should be gentler with our matriculants. We should recognize their effort. We should see that they are the freshest set of ideas, if you like, if I may go back to my theme, that are coming into the post-school system, and treat them as such, and look for ways to build on what they have attempted to do. Of course, there are issues with the percentages. I mean, how many of them started together at grade 1, and how many survive up until grade 12? How many of those who survive grade 12 go on to become something? We know that if we look at the unemployment rate, for example, while the unemployment rate of graduates is better, of people with diplomas is better, the unemployment of people with matric is rising. So matric is no longer enough for job seeking or even job creation, as it were. So those are some of the things that I think we need to discuss and think about further as a country. But I prefer to be gentle with those who make it up to matric, and look for ways to build on that. I don't agree, and I'll say this again, I don't agree that we have the best ideas necessarily out there in our policies and everywhere. I would like to challenge us. If we had the best ideas in this country, in our policies and everywhere, if we really did have the best ideas and all we need is implementation. I hear that song again and again. I'm not convinced about that song. If we really had the best ideas, how come that there is so much work? The work that needs to be done in this country is visible. Look at the roads, look at the schools, look at ESCOM, look at, I mean, the work that needs to be done is visible. But we are not doing it, and we are not doing it in part, not merely because we are not implementing, but because we don't have the ideas that will help us cross that bridge from desperation to doing. It's not merely that we have the best ideas in the world. I mean, people say this about our constitution: we have the best constitution in the world, we've got the best ideas in the world. All that is necessary is to implement. In a few cases, yes, it's the case. But I think we need to go back to our thinking. We need to put on our thinking caps again. We need to source ideas much more vigorously than we have done. I mean, think of the public works program, which was a brilliant idea when it first emerged. But give me 4 more ideas similar to that, that we have come up with. So I don't think we should give up on ideas yet. The search cannot be called off. We must continue searching for better ideas. How can we leverage them? I think, involve the people whose problems we are trying to solve. Sometimes the people whose problems we are trying to solve know the solution better than us, researchers, government officials. I mean, there are too many white elephants in this country that have been thought up by people somewhere, and they come and install these white elephants, and the people don't relate with them. So you leverage ideas by assuming that the people who are experiencing the problem already have part of the solution. They may not have the money, perhaps, they may not have the wherewithal in terms of skills, but they know what needs to happen. And I think we need to leverage that even more. The confusion of the political versus the, in other words, state versus party, government versus political party, it's a real problem, because that distinction has collapsed, especially at municipal level. I've seen that collapse cost us very dearly, because people just never take off their T-shirts, even when they are sitting in a government office wearing a tie. But in fact, in their hearts, they are wearing their T-shirt from the political party. And I think we need to move beyond that. So I can only agree with the sentiment that I feel Ubaba was bringing in with that question. Malawi sacking the whole cabinet, yeah, it's a drastic step because it means for 24 hours there was no government. There was only the president in that country. I don't know how safe that is. I just hope it's not a gimmick also, that it's a genuine move, based on genuine analysis of the problem. It's not the whim. I once went to Cameroon and I was told that the president, who still is the president even now, it was like 12 years ago, I was told that the president appoints people, then he goes away and he lives overseas somewhere in Europe. He visits his country from time to time. And one day he met one of his ministers at the airport, and he said, "I'm so-and-so minister of this and that." He said, "When did I appoint you?" So sometimes you have these people who are just drunk with power, and they will keep changing the cabinet again and again. It's a form of power that I was referring to. The power to coerce, power to reward, even power to appoint can be abused sometimes. So I hope that this president is not just on a whim, and that the next set of people that he elects will definitely do better. Kagame is a controversial fellow. It's back to the discussion about China and Singapore. So if you go to Rwanda today, it's a much improved country, and there's no denying that. Anyone who has been to the capital city of Rwanda will confirm this. It is the cleanest African city, one of the cleanest African cities I've ever been to. And I believe the president joins the cleaners every weekend, whenever he can, to clean up the city. That's how it started, the cleanliness. But when I saw how clean it was, I thought, where are the hawkers? How do they make a living? Have they been cleaned out of the city also? I worried about that. But technologically also, Rwanda is making very good progress. If you think about it, when we were celebrating our freedom on the 27th of May, 1994, or rather when we were electing, and 10th of May, 27th April, 10th of May, when we were installing Madiba as the first president, they were killing one another, a genocide. But they clearly seem to be overtaking us. So they are doing something right. And again, it's this, not just decisiveness, there's a bit of steel, which perhaps I shouldn't call dictatorship like I did earlier, but there's a bit of steel behind the state that we probably don't have. Do we want to go in that direction? I don't know. Is it necessary to go in that direction in order to find development of the kind that we see in Rwanda? I don't know. Can the president just say, I want to dismiss someone, show me who has done this, and someone must be. I saw a video that circulating of a minister of transport saying, arrest that man, and people run and arrest the person. Yeah, so we have to weigh up these things, because there are human rights, there are other rights, and a powerful president is good, but how much power must a president have for it to be progressive?
Thank you very much, Prof. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to close now. There is a question there in the chat room of luck. Theo, I'm sort of calling Theo J because that's how it's written there. Maybe if you can just introduce yourself and tell us your name, and then if you can just ask the question. And then Martha, if there are any comments, we'll just read those comments, and then we'll ask Professor Maluleke to, in responding to those questions, but also to give us his parting shots. So we start with Theo.
Thank you, Prof. I don't know if I'm audible.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Maluleke, and thank you for everyone. My question actually is about the leadership that Prof was talking about. I just want to check with regards to leaders being made, because my challenge is that in today's society, we don't have too much reference or people that we look up to in reference to leadership. So if you say leaders are made, is it not the problem that we are finding ourselves today, that leadership is lacking? Because the reason I'm saying that, I made examples on my question around Abotatu Mandela, the likes of Gandhi and Martin Luther and so forth. So I just want to curtail the question to that point, Prof. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Theo. Thank you very much. Any comments, Martha, there in the chat rooms before Prof. Maluleke respond and gives us his parting shot?
No, Prof. I think we are done on this end. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. So there were more questions today, less comments, and thank you so much. Prof. Maluleke, sir, your closing shot, your closing remarks or your parting shots, and after that I'll close the session officially. Over to you, Prof.
Yeah. So Theo's question about, Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Hitler, and others. I don't know why he includes Hitler among these. I suppose Hitler was an effective leader because he caused a Second World War and he killed 6 million Jews. That's efficiency of a ghastly kind. And of course, he was also very influential. I wouldn't like to demand of every leader to become a Nelson Mandela or a Martin Luther King Jr. or a Gandhi. I don't think it's fair. I think you have those kinds of people once in a while, and they emerge out of a particular out of particular circumstances. It's a bit like plants. Some plants don't grow in some soils; they grow in others. And I think we shouldn't try too hard to reproduce people who came out of a particular epoch. Even if you went to jail for 27 years, you don't become a Mandela because you don't go at the same time. So I think we should appreciate these for what they have done, and we should use them as benchmarks for our own kinds of leadership and leaders. I wish we did that harder than we do now. So think of Nyerere, who died driving a Toyota Corolla as president, and being driven around in the cheapest car available. Think about that simple life that people like Mandela lived. I mean, some people excuse him. They say the reason he led a simple life is because he missed out on the fashions. When he was sitting in jail, we were going on with fashions. But he could have tried to live differently when he was out. So I think there is a lot that we can learn, especially when it comes to exemplary leadership, in terms of example, the power of example. We can learn that, but I don't think we can reproduce them. And we must not over-idolize them any more than we should shoot them down, because there's also a tendency nowadays to shoot them down very easily, to say, oh, they spoke about rainbow, what rainbow? And yet people are not putting an alternative idea on the table. So they will shoot down the rainbow notion, but what do they bring on the table? They just say, my people. Who are your people? We don't know. So every leader has got their people, but they don't want to talk about the attempt to forge a new sense of cohesion. So my sense is that we should not try to reproduce them. We can't reproduce them, but we can learn from them. Also learn their mistakes, because they certainly made a few mistakes, all of them. If we were to focus on those, we could talk about them. We can also learn from their mistakes. My final thought really is, let's not call off the search for ideas. It's a constant search. We must constantly look for fresh ideas. And just because we're not aware of the idea personally or individually does not mean there is no better idea to deal with all the problems that we have. I believe that all solutions begin with ideas. And of course, the idea is not perfect. It's not total. It may need to be changed. It may need to be adapted. It may need to be thrown away to be replaced by another one. But without ideas, we can't lead. We can only lead by making sure that we produce, we leverage, we source, we constantly search for better ideas than the ideas that are currently available. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thanks very much, Prof. Once again, thank you so much for availing yourself, for empowering us tonight. We've learned a lot from you. As I said, when I opened the session, that we are here to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn. We sharpen each other as leaders from different spheres of life. Every person who's here, it's a leader on his or her right. So we learn from each other every Wednesdays. And tonight you really inspired us. Thank you so much, really, with this, the power of ideas. And I think it's something that as leaders, as scholars, as researchers, that we must really look into harder, because and I agree with you that there are no implementations without ideas. What are you going to implement? So ideas are very, very important. So you have moved us, you have inspired us tonight about the leadership of ideas. So thank you very much to you. You are a very, very busy person. I know it was not easy to find you, but once again, as I said earlier on, thanks for your humility. Just to come and be with us here. You could have been somewhere else and doing other things. So we really want to thank you. And we know, because as I said, that once you attend this session, it will never be the last time we see you. Somehow that we will again come and inspire us. And to everyone, especially to those who are here or who joined us for the first time, once more, thank you very much, colleagues. We meet every Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Please do join us again next week, Wednesday. As I said, that these sessions are very contagious. There is no way you'll attend and you'll never come back again, because that is where we come relaxed as leaders, talking to each other. There's no pressure. We are just learning from each other. There's no one who's judging another one. It's just that we are sharpening each other. As an iron sharpen one another, social leaders empower each other. So that's exactly what we do here. So we'll be back again next week, Wednesday at 6 p.m. as we do every Wednesdays. With another powerful session, with another powerful speaker. So please do join us again. But also, if you may want to join us, we've got a Facebook page. It's called Leadership Think Tank. If you may want to join us there as well. That's where we really, we continue with our leadership discussions and debate. So it's a Facebook. If you get there, you can just check Leadership Think Tank, and then you'll find all sorts of leaders there and all sorts of people. And we are more than happy to please just post anything that will also empower us, any leadership issue, because that's a leadership platform. So we are more than happy to do that at any time. Once more, thank you very much to our regulars, to everyone we hear every Wednesdays, to our members, and also, as I'm saying that, to special thank you to those who joined us for the first time, and we hope and pray that we'll see you again next week. Remember, leadership is a journey. Leadership is not a destination. You've got to empower yourself all the time until you go to grave. As long as you still want to be an effective leader, you've got to empower yourself all the time. Otherwise, you become obsolete. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This session is now adjourned. May God bless you till we meet again next week, Wednesday. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.